Hi guys, thanks for stopping by. Today I want to watch with you the Lord of the Rings movie, and we're starting with the first part, The Fellowship of the Ring. Since everybody has been doing reactions recently of watching it for the first time, I thought it would be a really nice idea to watch it from my point of view, and I've watched it a lot. I also read almost all the books that Tolkien has written or that his son has published with his writings. I think the only one that's missing is the Legend of Sigurd and Gudrun, and maybe one or two others. I thought it would be a nice idea to just watch the movie and then talk into the camera all the things that popped to my mind about what happened during production, what is different from the books, what is the meaning of certain sentences, words, background. So we see how this turns out. I hope you're ready. You got your snacks and drinks. I have my homebrewed stout with me, and let's get started. So the language she's talking at the beginning is Grey Elvish, and throughout the whole three films they are only using Grey Elvish as the Elven tongue. Grey Elvish is called Sindarin in High Elvish, fun part, and the other language that also is there is High Elvish, which is Quenya.
Much that once was.
So the three rings that were made, they were made by the High Elves that lived in Eregion in front of the gates of Moria during the Third Age. And 19 of the 20 rings were made by the elves and not by Sauron or anyone else. But the elves got help from Sauron because he thought putting power into rings would be a quite nice idea to control them then in the end with his own ring.
Fairest of all beings.
So also the rings that were given later by Sauron to the dwarves and men were created by the elves.
And 9 rings were gifted to the race of men, who above all else...
From the 9 ring wraiths, there are 3 who were of Númenórean descent. That is where Aragorn's ancestors come from, the high kings of men. So something that didn't work for Morgoth, the first Dark Lord in the First Age, is that he could never really subdue the elves. And so Sauron's strategy here was to make this one ring and thereby to control all the other rings, and through that the elves. But of course it failed. I mean, basically as soon as he made the rings, his one ring, and declared his power, the elves were aware of him, took off their rings and hid them. And that's why the war started, because Sauron noticed his subtlety didn't work.
But there were some who resisted. A last alliance of men and elves marched against the armies of Mordor.
So the lords who were fighting there were Gil-galad of the High Elves and Elendil, High King of Men. At the time they had the kingdoms of Gondor and Arnor, which were the kingdoms of men, and then the High Elves and other elves were gathered in different areas, like in the Grey Havens and Rivendell. Something that's noteworthy is that what happens afterwards is not really according to the book. So in the book you have Elendil and Gil-galad killing Sauron, destroying his body, and in the fight also dying, because they were slain by Sauron or orcs, it's not really mentioned. But basically Sauron is destroyed before Isildur cuts the one finger off his hand.
Took up his father's...
Yeah, so that is one of the main changes they made in the first movie that is not in accordance with the lore. That you see 4 fingers being cut off, and you basically say that Sauron was destroyed because of this. Isildur only cut off 1 finger, and after Sauron was already destroyed. Because Gollum specifically says in the book that Sauron has only 9 fingers left. He was tortured by him personally.
But the hearts of men are easily corrupted.
It's all true what she says now.
Power has a will of its own.
Yeah, so the disaster of the Gladden Fields, which is portrayed here, there is a manuscript from Tolkien in the Unfinished Tales, where you can read the whole story, which is basically written out completely, but it's not in the Lord of the Rings books. And it's really similar to what they say here. The ring was lost because it slipped off his finger, betraying Isildur.
It consumed him.
So Gollum was from the people that were the ancestors of the later hobbits, 500 years earlier. And so he used to be pretty much a hobbit, and you can see that in the third movie. So the fate that Gollum has here, after 500 years of having his mind corrupted, but still not being a wraith that would be invisible all the time, just still a being, corporeal, visible, but very corrupted in body and mind. This is basically the fate that Bilbo was steering towards after having had it for the ring for 60 years. And this got basically avoided by Gandalf telling him not to keep the ring. Yeah, the scream from Gollum is something they added so that the story's compressed of Bilbo. Obviously it's very different. So the map is only accurate for the end of the Third Age, obviously. Right? The lands changed and everything.
By Bilbo Baggins.
He's writing about what happened to him during the Tales of the Hobbit, there and back again. Concerning hobbits is a chapter of the foreword or preface of The Lord of the Rings.
Being neither renowned as great warriors.
The hobbits participated in the battle, one of the last battles of the Kingdom of Arnor, and sent archers, so they are, to some extent, warriors. Yeah. British ale is really good. I love it. I don't smoke though.
For all hobbits share a love of things that grow. Samwise
family is later connected to the name Gardener in the sense that I think one of his sons becomes... one of his sons gets the last name Gardener. He's called Gamgee, Samwise Gamgee.
Frodo, the door!
Yes, so some of the names of the hobbits and also of the dwarves, especially in the book The Hobbit, were taken from what is it, Old Norse, I think. So Frodo means the wise, I think, if I remember correctly. The book, especially the Fellowship of the Ring, is full of poems and songs, so it's really nice that you can hear the road goes ever on and on from Gandalf.
Half the Shire's been invited, and the rest of them are turning up anyway.
So for hobbits, it's normal that when you celebrate your own birthday, you give presents to everybody. So the fact that Bilbo is making such a huge party with almost everybody in the whole Shire is saying something about the wealth that he has accumulated. And this obviously comes from the stories in The Hobbit, where he gets some treasure in the end.
For things are made to endure in the Shire.
And Frodo and Bilbo are actually noble of heritage, in at least in the terms that you can have here, because they have servants like the Gamgees as gardeners.
And there always will be.
In the book, the first thing that Frodo does before he leaves is sell Bag End to the Sackville Bagginses, which is obviously a huge betrayal in the terms that Bilbo thinks and the way that he is shown here. So maybe it's good that it is not shown in the movie. It would make you think why Frodo is doing such an awful thing. Obviously he's trying to hide that he's leaving the Shire, and he says he's just moving to a different house.
All right then, keep your secrets.
Oh, the way they actually shot this whole thing is Gandalf is sitting in the front of the carriage, and Frodo is sitting 2 or 3 meters behind him, and the whole thing is cut up so that it looks like they're sitting on the same bench. And they have to look at the right points in space to look as if they would be looking at each other. That's called forced perspective, and they use it a lot to make these realistically looking images of hobbits being small. Yeah, as we know from The Hobbit, Gandalf is mostly known for his fireworks in the Shire, because anything else that he does really is of no concern to hobbits. Ah, the rolling hills. I think Warwickshire was the inspiration that Tolkien had, because he spent part of his childhood there.
Good to see you.
111 years old, who would believe it?
Yeah, so here they have the actor switching. So when you see Bilbo, you see a huge double of Gandalf, mostly like, not a huge person, but a person who is wearing one of these huge suits. And then when you see Gandalf, you see Bilbo as a tiny, like not really midget, but one of these half tall people that they had for this movie. And this scene in particular is made with a blue screen. So they had to take some efforts to actually make it look like Bilbo's actually taking the staff and the hat from Gandalf. Oh, and of course they had to build 2 sets of bag end, one small for Gandalf and one normal sized for Bilbo. On the chimney there, on the right side, you see, is it Frodo's parents? I think it's Frodo's parents. So Bilbo's sister and her husband, or his brother and his wife? Not sure.
Oh, tea.
So you mean to go through with your...
So again, in this scene, Bilbo's standing very far away from the actual position where he would seem. So further in the background, and then Gandalf's lifting the cup off a completely different pot of tea that's in the foreground, and it all looks like it's on the same plane. You can see the pointy ears of hobbits. I remember in some documentaries that John Astin, the actor of Sam, was really annoyed that they very often had to get the feet and the ears, the prosthetics, even though they were not in the end seen in film. So I think he counted how often they had to do the makeup and prosthetics in the morning, even though it wasn't visible on film later.
Old Toby, the finest weed in the South Farthing.
Yes, so Old Toby's named by the, what was it, Tobald someone? I need to look up the name, who discovered that he could smoke pipe weed and made it famous throughout the Shire. So this piece of music is, I think, made by a band of some sort, and not part of the typical Howard Shore score. I think I heard that Pippin is in the band, though I didn't notice him so far. Maybe I'm gonna look back and highlight him if I find him. Oh, and these 2 that you see now are the 2 children of Peter Jackson.
Turn them all to stone!
Yeah, so obviously the story that Bilbo says is not correct, it's a simplification. Gandalf was the one making them argue until the sun was rising. Oh yeah, this must be Lobelia and Otto Sackville-Baggins. Their son, Loto, is later the supposed chief of the Shire during the part that was cut from the movies, that is the scouring of the Shire.
That was your idea!
Yeah, so this nice interlude is not part of the book, but it shows really how Pippin and Merry are behaving in general. So it's quite a good representation. So a typical thing for hobbits is that they can be really scared, but they are very quick to being happy again.
Meriadoc Brandybuck and Peregrine Took. I might have...
The names of the hobbits, I think, are Gothic, but I'm not 100% sure.
As often as I can spare them.
I'm leaving everything to him.
What about this ring of yours?
So the scene, I'm not sure, I don't think it's actually mentioned in The Lord of the Rings, because I think it's written from the perspective of Frodo, so Gandalf just tells him it was very difficult to get Bilbo to give up the ring, but yeah, it's one of the scenes that I don't remember as starkly from the book. It's been quite a while since I read the Lord of the Rings books. I read the Silmarillion a lot, but not the Lord of the Rings.
Do not take me for some conjurer of cheap tricks!
I really like how they made Gandalf appear here, and I was really sad that they did exactly the same, just a bit stranger in The Hobbit, which is really unnecessary. So when you're a first-time watcher, you really don't see the importance of this moment, but that is the key difference between a hobbit and any other living being that has ever had the ring or got in contact with it, because he can give it up after 60 years of being influenced by the ring. And you see how the ring wants to stick to his hand, and then doesn't jump and bounce on the floor, but just falls down and stays there immediately. So the ring really didn't want to leave him. And actually, I think it's hinted that the ring wanted him to go see the old places like Mirkwood and Erebor, because then he could be captured by Sauron. Now that the ring is not with him anymore, this whole plan of the ring is not working.
Goodbye, dear Bilbo.
Never noticed Gandalf's wink on this scene. I like how the floor is really dirty, like used and normal and not clean and artificial. So you see Frodo is stepping on the ring. That's how he discovers it. So you see just a few scenes here coming up, but it's 10 years between Gandalf leaving Bag End and Frodo and Gandalf coming back to talk to him, and before Frodo then sets out on the journey. So it's a really long time, and that explains why Frodo has to search for the ring when Gandalf comes back, and also why Bilbo ages so much and up to the point when they meet him in Rivendell. Yeah, so Gollum was being tortured in Mordor. He went there because he was drawn by the rising power in the south, in Mordor, and Sauron was calling all evil to him, and Gollum felt this and was moving there. And he was captured, tortured, imprisoned, and later released, as we find out. And this is the first look of Minas Tirith, the huge miniature that was 4 meters tall.